Good afternoon and welcome to the City Council informational meeting. The meeting will start in 60 seconds.
Calling this meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council informational meeting, Tuesday, January 12th to order. First item on our meeting here today would be City Council open discussion. Do we have any items for open discussion, Councilor Irfenbach?
Thank you. I just wanted to lift up to the group a reminder that the Bishop Dudley Hospitality House celebrated its one-year anniversary today. And what's interesting to me is the idea that they're keeping track of the numbers of people that they're serving, and they're in the 1,500 to 1,700 range for unduplicated individual people, and about 75 or so families. And those numbers are dramatically different from what we'll see or what we have seen in the past on that one-day count for homeless people in Sioux Falls. That one-day count is coming up on the 26th of January, and so when it hits the news and we have only these numbers, blah, 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 remember it's one moment in time, and that those numbers coming from the Bishop Dudley are probably more accurate, and it's something that I just am concerned that we keep kind of on the top of the mind, and I just wanted to share that and congratulate the Bishop Dudley House on 1 year of service.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kiley.
Just a reminder that next week on the 19th, we will be addressing the issue of parking strips and boulevards during our land use committee. And we're just going to flip-flop the process next week. We're going to hear from city staff and on their proposal that they have been working on here in the last month. And then we will be taking public input after that. So I encourage those that have an interest in that topic to attend next week on the 19th Land Use Committee.
I was going to say, to add to that, I will not be at that meeting. I will be in Pierre for a conference in Pierre. And so we'll be at least one short on the committee.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other items for open discussion? Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention to everybody, everybody I've seen, I've tried to mention this, and that is get a shingle shot because, well, I have shingles, and it's very, very unpleasant. I think this is the worst kind of illness I've ever had, and the shingle shot should kind of protect you from that. So don't be bashful about getting that shot. It can be very, very helpful.
Thank you. Any other items from council? Okay, Councilor Rolfing.
Thank you. I'll reiterate what Councilor Staggers said. I have had my shot, but I still did get it. So I tried to get my money back from the doctor. It didn't work. He just said, he put a spin on it that, well, your case was much less severe because you had the shot. So I didn't get my money back. Anyway. I want to give a short report, if I could, on our trip to Nashville. I wasn't here when Councilor Erickson and Karski gave their report, and also our budget analyst, Mr. Bixler. I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing this, but I want to go through, and I understand, Councilor Erickson, that you touched a little bit on the Metro government, just a little bit. So that's the one I didn't review on my notes, but I'll go through it because I remember most of the note stuff. They merged 50 years ago. The county of Nashville, or the county that Nashville is in, and the city of Nashville, took 2 votes to do it. Their biggest industries down there are banking, healthcare, publishing, and music. So there was a lot of competition, as you can imagine, for the tax dollars. They had they still have 2 different rates inside the city of Nashville and outside the city of Nashville. And the downtown, of course, gives viability to everyone. Smaller communities continued the service that they were providing at the time of the merger. So if a smaller town was doing all the snow removal and all that kind of stuff, they continue to do that, continue to get taxes and that kind of thing. They combined education. That was really tough. That happened 15 years later. So that hasn't been going as much. And the other issue was satellite cities not annexing, and the law enforcement combination, combining the sheriff department and the police department. Interesting, they took care of that by having the police department handle the criminal area and the sheriff's department handling the civil area. And that seems to be working very, very well in their situation. Other cities that they looked at were Minneapolis and St. Louis. Some of those worked pretty well. Some of them didn't. They said they have a 40-member cabinet or council, and that's to have everybody from the smaller cities have representation. That's the way they sold it. There are about 640,000 people in the metro area, and well over 1 million in the metropolitan area. Let me give you an example of what's happened to tax rates. This would be interesting for all of us. Nashville, is the lowest tax city in Tennessee right now. Lowest tax city in Tennessee. In 1963, the mill rate was 5.7, the year they started it, $5.70. In 1965, it was $5.30. In 2014, it was $4.51. So it's come down substantially with no loss in service. What they figure is that they've saved 20 to 30% of their budgets on extra, whether it be administration, whether it be buying in quantities, whether it be doing anything. So it's really quite unique and quite a way to save some tax dollars. The finance director said they have a tendency to leverage a little bit more than we do. They have a 1% sales tax, and it's used only for payment of bonds. So they're leveraging the entire 1% instead of using the 1% to pay for items. They're leveraging it all the way out. Does that make sense to everybody? It doesn't make sense to me, really, but not to do all of that. But they're doing it, and that's how they got so much done, infrastructure done, all at once. They have no term limits on their people, on the council, and they have no public input at council meetings, absolutely none. So with that, I'm gonna give two quick little ones on a couple others that I wanted to, and one is the state of the state. I went to one session, it's called State of the State. What are the things affecting the states that will affect municipalities also? Some current pending issues are stabilizing state budgets. Medical costs continue to outpace inflation, 6% to 2% or 1% in inflation. The funding for healthcare is really going to be a problem in the future. Needs state transportation funding from Congress, or stable transportation funding, and employment, minimum wage, jobs, right to work, et cetera. Some of the states we're looking at. Current issues that they have, election redistricting that's going to happen because of the election coming, opiate addiction, methamphetamine or marijuana addiction and legislation, drones and Uber. We're dealing with some of that stuff right here. They feel that the turnover of election of elected officials is a significant problem. Term limits, especially when they're too short, is a real significant problem because, as you and I all know, has been here, it takes 2 to 3 years sometimes to really get up to speed to know what's going on. And then you've got, me, who it could take 5 or 6, and some like Greg that it takes only 6 months. And but to do that, that really gives you 1.5 terms of knowing where you can really be effective. So they're not really in favor of that. And then, of course, state and federal mandates. I'm going to do one other one real quick because they had a golden aging. And as you know, Sioux Falls was talked about as, and you be quiet, Miss Erickson, just because I'm, okay. You'll get to where I am to someday also, and it ain't bad. Sioux Falls was voted as one of the best places in the country to retire. Here are the things, 1 in 5 people in the United States are over 50, and it's going to go up. Most of us want to stay in our own home. They need buildings. We need to build things for all ages. 8 demands or domains of livability: housing, social participation, respect or social inclusion, civil or civic participation and employment, communication and information, community support, health and health services, outdoor space, and transportation. We need to, their suggestion was we need to concentrate on 1 or 2 of these to really make ourselves better, then move on to the other ones. But I thank you for letting me do that. It was a very good conference. I learned a lot, and hopefully we can bring some of this back and implement it here. This is the book that we got. As you can see, it's been used a little bit, and so it was a great conference. Any questions?
Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, a lot of communities are having problems with their pension funds. Did they say anything about Nashville or anything?
I didn't ask about that, and wasn't in on a session of that. Thank you again.
Thank you, Counselor. Moving forward, we'll take our presentation of the day, parking of commercial vehicles, and we'll start with Chief Matt Burns.
Councilors, thank you. Police Chief Matt Burns. Bring before you tonight for your consideration parking of commercial vehicles matter. By way of background, as you know, the police department does have a contract with several tow companies, which we refer to as duty tow. We use these tow companies on a rotation, and it's typically a week long, whereby they are available and make themselves available to us for emergency purposes to come out, clear intersections, clear accidents that we need done in a quick fashion. That is so we can get traffic moving, any number of things that we might need a tow truck for, and we don't want to be in the normal queue, if you will, and that's the essence of the duty tow function. A matter came to us, it was actually referred to us as a complaint, where a driver of one of our duty tows had his tow truck at his residence. It was in the southwest part of town. Actually, that's a good thing for us in that the driver would have their tow truck right with them, because what we would not like to see is them having to go from, say, the southwest part of town, if they work for Eastgate, clear up to Eastgate on East 10th to get the tow truck to respond. They don't like that either because they are contractually obligated to respond within a certain amount of time. What we propose then, because of this complaint, is that we would accept tow trucks owner-operated by a tow company under contract with the city and or county that is assigned to the duty tow from the commercial vehicle parking regulations. Thereby, they could park in the street if they were under contract as a duty tow. Again, it just makes it easier for us, for them to be able to quickly access their tow truck and get to the scene where we need them, oftentimes in an exigent fashion, to clear that accident, to clear that obstruction. Most often it's in a very busy part of town, but it may not be. But the point is that they're able to get there quickly, and not only for us, but to live up to their contract. So that's in essence of what we're proposing.
Questions from the council? Councilor Urfenbach.
Thank you, Chief. It hasn't been that long ago that we talked about parking, including RVs and all kinds of other trucks with signs on it. This one, tow trucks weren't covered in that change that we made, because we allowed some commercial vehicles to be parked in residential areas in that change. And I see Keith has given me the high sign.
Yep,
can you help us answer that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilors, Keith Allenstein, City Attorney's Office. I think, Councilor Oppenbach, what you're talking about is there was an amendment, I think it was in 2013, to the residential commercial parking. That deals with being able to park in your driveway and those kind of things. This, for whatever reason at that time, there was not a similar change made to the regulations regarding street parking. And the language that we're proposing actually mirrors the language that was approved for the residential parking under section 160.553. So the stuff that you were talking about before allowed them to park in a residential area, but it does require that they be off the street. So because those are more the zoning ordinances, and what we're talking about here are the ordinances that pertain to parking on the street.
Right, and that was the piece that I knew we had done something with it, but I didn't remember that it was only for parking in the driveway.
Yeah,
Because there are, commercial vehicles parking in residential areas all the time. I guess I'm not that uncomfortable with this. This is one of those things that only makes sense, especially if it's that, if they're rotating on a weekly basis or whatever, it makes sense to me, but that would be my input.
Councilor Rolfing?
Yeah, it seems to me there was something there too that allowed commercial vehicles.
Not on the
to-
street, though, is what he's
Not on
saying.
the street, it's in the driveway. Okay. I do have one other question, and that is, Chief, are these, or maybe Keith can do it also, answer it. Are these, size-wise, are these the ones that will do cars only? So that we don't have the ones that are, semi to semi, the 6 or 8 wheels behind, and they have a big tractor trailer kind of thing?
We do realize that there is probably some room here on the exact length of what we would approve and even request. Unfortunately, we never know what kind of and size of vehicle is going to be in an accident that is going to require a duty tow. So oftentimes the tow truck you're going to see would exceed the 22-foot present parking restriction that's allowable in the street, and that's just to be able to practically handle the size of vehicles that are out there. So that there is some further thought perhaps on that to come up with something reasonable.
Okay.
Councilor Kiley?
Do you know if they have the ability to rotate the responsibilities around too, or is it going to be the same individual, the same residents all the time?
They are in a rotation, and the way it works out, it's roughly perhaps every 2 months. I think there's roughly 8 tow companies in that contract, and again, they are on for a week at a time, so it would probably, and again, there's nothing precise, once every couple weeks. Now, it might not be the same driver every time for that company, but the potential is that is the case.
Well, it would be good even if, within the company, if they could have that rotated within different drivers. And because my thought is that way, if there is a complaint by a nearby resident, that it's just going to be a temporary issue. It's not going to be happening 24/7.
Of course, we don't require them to do that within the contract now, is to have a different driver. That would get a little bit more than what we speak to now, but I understand.
Sure, maybe we could suggest that to them. So, thank you.
Councilor Karski?
Mr. Allenstein, can you give us the code that would be affected by this again, where it is an ordinance? I'm just trying to pull it up and on a read through, and
The one that we're trying to change, or that we're talking about changing now, or the one that we already changed under the?
the one that we're talking about changing now. Do we have a sample or?
Yeah, I thought it was available on Sire there. Should be.
Okay. Should have went there first.
Should be 77.009, which eliminates the ability of parking commercial vehicles or materials in residential areas. Several years ago, the council approved service vehicle exception to that, but these don't meet the criteria of a service vehicle because they're specifically designed and adapted for a specific purpose. So that's why the exception for these.
So it's illegal to park them in your driveway or on the street?
No, in 2013, under 160.553, which is under the zoning ordinances, a change was made. There's still a general commercial vehicle prohibition, but a change was made, and it says that you can't park commercial vehicles in those residential areas, and one of the exceptions is it says unless the vehicle is a tow truck owned or operated by a tow company under contract with the city and or county that is assigned as a duty tow. So we've basically just taken that same language and we want to apply it to parking on the street because 160.553 only deals with off-street parking in a residential area. 77.009 deals with on-street parking.
Okay.
Councilor Erickson?
I'm not sure if this is for you or for Chief Burns, and maybe you kind of answered this before. How many do we contract with now? Or is it we are on a rotation with every towing truck in the city? Or do we only contract with 2?
No, there's roughly, I didn't count the exact number, there's roughly 7 or 8. It's the contract's reviewed, I think renewed about every 3 years, if I remember right. As long as a company can meet the criteria, we will contract with them to do that. So there's, I think there's roughly about 7 or 8 right now.
And it's criteria that you set forth in the contract, so to speak, like they have to be up to date on licenses, sales tax.
Yeah, they have to meet certain safety criteria. They have to have a certain amount of equipment. They have to have a certain number of trucks. There's a whole host of requirements that they have to meet.
One more, if I may, Mr. Chair. So my other question is what if there is a complaint? Say I own a tow truck company and it's my turn to be on call over the weekend, and so I have it, and my neighbor doesn't like it. Is there a way, as you call in, that these are tracked by address, just so we know, yeah, he's on call this weekend, it's going to be rotating, et cetera, similar to what Councilor Kiley had stated, but is there a way to know, I mean, if somebody's coming out to review the complaint, how are they going to know if they're really on contract or not?
We know who the duty tow is because when that call comes in, Metro has a list, and we know who's the duty tow assigned at that particular time too, because that's who they contract out. So yeah, we always know who the duty tow is.
They'll be flagged that whatever
Whether they were or
towing
weren't the duty
company
tow.
is on that list. Okay,
Yep.
that
And
makes
if they
sense.
weren't the duty tow, then they wouldn't fit within this
Then they'll get a
exception, and they'll
ticket
get a
or
ticket.
asked to make the change. All right, thank you.
Counselor Jameson.
Thank you, Keith or Matt. You know, this exception is necessary because without it, it does cause a problem for the services to for the police department. The issue does come as you guys have already come around to, and it's pretty cool to watch, actually. I just say, as a guy who's leaving in a few months, that it's pretty cool to see that you guys got it. The issue of enforcement, finding out if the guy's really on duty, because that's what's the cause of this last complaint was that the tow truck driver just kept parking there all the time, and nobody knew that he was not on duty, and he would argue that he was on duty, but it was every week, so clearly he wasn't. The officers all do know who the duty tow trucks are because they're actively calling them if there's a accident, so that's real easy for them. The other thing that we found in this last complaint was that once the department really took over on it, they actually worked out a situation where the tow truck driver parked his vehicle at another location at a commercial area, that it was still pretty convenient. It wasn't perfect, but it was like on his way. And I think encouraging that to continue so that those commercial vehicles are parked in a more appropriate area, but still convenient to those individuals who were on call duty. And as well, if I could argue or state that the individual who is on that call duty is likely to be the low man on the totem pole for that tow truck company because it's a lousy thing at any moment to be called. And so it's necessary to have this exception, and it's really the only way around it if we want to establish the same level of service as we've been accustomed to in the police department. But I don't know how you encourage rotation around so that one home or one neighborhood doesn't get hammered all the time by some big flatbed truck out there. That'd be nice if we could figure that out, but it'd even be better if they could work out an arrangement so it is nearby in a commercial area. Like in this instance, in the Southwest District, the individual lived deep back in a neighborhood. Generally, anything he would be called to would be bringing him back towards the town. And they found a spot that was essentially on his way, and it worked out well. So encouraging that to continue. So if any of you should ever get that same complaint, just work in that direction. I think we can find solutions pretty easy. And but thank you for bringing it forward. I know some homeowners aren't going to appreciate it, but I think it's necessary.
Any other questions, comments from council? I guess the only thing I have is to back up Councilor Rolfing's question about the size and basically getting to that flatbed. I would think that most of the accidents that they're going to experience are going to be car truck. And that if it's something larger than that, that needs a larger piece of equipment, it's going to take a little time to get that piece of equipment anyway. So I hope that that's what we look at, if that has to be added to the ordinance at a later time or before we bring it in front of the council. Okay, thank you very much. With that, I need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we go into executive session, consult with legal counsel about proposed or pending litigation or contractual matters pursuant to South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-23.
Second, Karski.
All right, with that being done, we will go into executive session, and I will have to ask the room to be clear.